press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Hello children, we are discussing coordination compounds. Part 11. So far our discussion has reached VBT, and in valence bond theory we have used different approaches, different ways in order to solve the questions. Now there were certain drawbacks which were associated with valence bond theory. So some limitations. One of the limitation was why magnetic moment changes with temperature. There was no answer. Spectra of coordination compounds, there was no answer. That is color compound formation of coordination compound, there was no answer for it as well. And quantitative approach of magnetic moment, it was also not there. And why pairing occurs in case of strong ligands and weak ligand relationships are different. That means when you are looking on a strong ligand, as I said in VBT yesterday, strong ligand will force pairing, but when there is a weak ligand, pairing will not be forced. So electrons would love to remain unpaired there. So there was no proper approach used by the valence bond theory, which was given by Pauling, in order to explain different bonding properties of coordination compounds. Although it could explain many things, but the qualitative approach of strong ligands and weak ligands was not given. Quantitative approach for magnetic moment not given. So we are doing an experimental investigation on the basis of which we are finding out magnetic properties. And then according to that we were just aligning how many unpaired electrons will be there, and then we were able to decide whether the given ligand system is a strong or weak ligands. Then coordination compounds color process is not possible because coordination compounds are colored, there is no doubt in that, right? But when you look on the d orbitals that we talked yesterday, according to valence bond theory, we have seen it that all the d orbitals given are degenerate. So the transition from d to d will not develop any color at all, because color, as I mentioned yesterday, can only come into play that when electron moves from one energy state to other, means if it moves from one particular energy level to the next energy level, and while coming back it loses some energy with some frequency, and the energy will be equal to h nu. So we can calculate that frequency, we will be able to find out the color, because if that particular frequency, if that particular wavelength comes in the range of visible zone, we'll be able to see the color. These are generalizations that we have taken into consideration. Now when you look on coordination compounds and you look on all the d orbitals, you will find out the 5d orbitals, whether it is 3d or it is 4d orbitals, any d orbital, they are all degenerate, as I mentioned a while earlier. So degenerate means their energies are same. So there is no question of electron transference and spectra, that is color generation of coordination compounds, cannot be explained using this property itself, right? So there must be some alternate method, and indeed we know, even if you have read D and F block elements properly, children, and general properties of D transition elements, you will find out color in transition elements comes into play due to DD transition. For that, it is important to know how exactly these are assigned. One more important thing that we can talk about is, if you take out copper sulfate anhydrous, if you take out copper sulfate anhydrous, it is white. However, if you take copper sulfate pentahydrated, means there is water of crystallization attached, it's a hydrated form of copper sulfate, it is colored. So almost blue color is coming into play here. That means these water molecules which are acting as water of crystallization are imparting some properties to the central metal atom. Because of that, colors are coming into play. So what exactly are the properties imparted? It could not be explained using any of the colors, not only for copper sulfate, for any systems which are in an anhydrous form which are not colored but in hydrated form. Not only in hydrated form but certain types of atoms attached to it. When there are certain types of atoms attached to it, they start to become colored. So these answers were not given by valence bond theory. So for that purpose, a more qualitative approach which was based upon the electrostatic forces was developed, and that theory almost to most extent covered the limitations and answered the questions qualitatively, and that approach is CFT, that is crystal field theory. You should keep it in mind, the coordination compound that we are taking into consideration. This coordination compound will be in the form of a crystal, and the properties exhibited by it, that is the crystal properties exhibited by it, will be alternated due to the presence and by the presence of the ligands. Now, what are important things with respect to this crystal field theory is, what it considers is, it considers the central metal atom and ligands to be point charges. So once they are point charges, so laws of electrostatics will work on it. And here, central metal atom, which is usually in the ionic form, this will be interacting with ligands. Very simple. If it is positively charged central metal atom, it will be interacting with the ligand. Suppose we have a ligand in the form of OH minus. So there is electrostatic interaction between central metal atom and OH, which makes this OH to come close to central metal atom, and a crystal will be made. When many OH molecules will come towards the central metal atom, a crystal will be made. In presence of those ligands, the d orbitals of central metal atom will be under the impact of electrostatic forces from the ligand. So, according to crystal field theory, central metal atom and ligands are interacting with each other by electrostatic forces. Sir, what if we have ligand which is neutral? That is the ligand which does not have any charge at all. Then suppose we have some neutral ligands. Suppose this is central metal atom, children. We have some neutral ligands in the form of ammonia. We know ammonia, when you look on ammonia, it has a permanent dipole moment. Nitrogen is delta minus, and this region becomes, because individual dipole is what? This is delta plus, delta minus, delta plus, delta minus, delta plus, delta minus. A permanent dipole is here in ammonia, right? Nitrogen with a lone pair of electron upwards. So this is hydrogen, hydrogen, hydrogen pyramidal shape. The dipole moment towards nitrogen, dipole moment towards nitrogen, dipole moment towards nitrogen. The net dipole moment will be in upward direction, because the dipole moment of lone pair is away from the atom holding the lone pair of electron. So the net dipole moment of ammonia will be making these hydrogen regions as plus region and the region of nitrogen as minus region. So there is a proper dipole moment, dipole in ammonia. This is a neutral molecule. Even in water molecule, we know, children, oxygen, which has got two lone pair of electrons, resultant dipole of lone pairs is upwards. Then you got two hydrogens attached to it, their resultant also upward. There is some perfect dipole moment, oxygen being minus and this hydrogen being plus end. Correct or not? So there is a proper dipole moment existing in neutral molecules. So then the interaction becomes ion-ion interaction. It can become ion-ion interaction, or it can become ion dipole interaction. Okay, if we have the central metal atom with no charge, so central metal atom does not have any charge at all, and the molecules which are on the other side are neutral molecules, then even then electrostatic forces between central metal atom and neutral charges can exist because of two reasons. One of the reasons that we can put forward is the dispersion forces will exist there. However, how close a ligand can approach to the central metal atom will be decided by the electron is present in the d orbitals. One more important postulate of crystal field theory is that there is no interaction between the inner orbitals of ligands and the inner orbitals of the metal atom. So technically, interaction is between the lone pair of the electron, which is to be donated to the central metal atom, and the orbitals of d in the valence shell. So internal structure of both ligands and central metal atom does not play any part at all. Am I clear or not? So let us have a look on the molecules using crystal field approach. So in crystal field approach, you have taken different things into consideration. Ligands are brought close to central metal on the basis of various interactions, and I mentioned out clearly what type of interactions can exist here. So laws of electrostatics are working here. Keep it in mind, children. These ligands which are held to central metal by electrostatic forces are not making an ionic bond. Keep it in mind. So the ligands are being pulled towards, and once the ligands are pulled towards the central metal, after that donation of electrons to the hybridized orbitals will come into play, which determines the secondary valency. Am I clear? Let us have a look what happens. So when ligands are not available, so when there is no ligand, when there is no field of ligand is coming towards central metal atom at all, so we will consider d orbitals. There are d orbitals here. I will take d orbital into consideration here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are our d orbitals. This is energy diagram. This is energy diagram. Now, what are different d orbitals that we have, and we know the shapes of d orbitals also. What are those, children? So we have the d orbitals as, say, this is xy. Then you got xz. Then we have yz. Then you have x, this is y. Then you have z. Let me tell you. So one of the d orbital is dxy. We know what's the shape of d orbital. It's double dumbbell. Now here this is x-axis and this is y-axis. When the d orbital is present between the plane of x and y, we call that as dxy. So dxy will be here. So two lobes above the plane, below the plane. So this is our dxy orbital. You can see that dxy orbital is present between the plane of x and y. In between the plane of x and y, you can see that x-axis, y-axis and z-axis are not interacting with it at all. Now similar way, you have dxz orbital. It will be along x and z. I have shown it two-dimensionally here, but comprehended three-dimensionally how exactly the axis will be, right? Then this will be dyz. Again, double dumbbell. Now if you look on these three orbitals, children, you will find out these three orbitals. Which one? dxy, dxz and dyz. dyz. These all the orbitals are present in between the plane. They are not present on the plane. They are not covering x-axis. They are not covering y-axis or z-axis. They are just present in between the plane itself. Am I clear? Good. Now then we have all the planes are covered. So x, y, z plane are all covered. Whatever the planes are available we have. So between x, you can comprehend it like this, children. Say here. So these are our x-axis, y-axis, and this is our z-axis. Hope you can see it clearly. Right? Yes or no? So these are the axes we have, availability of the axes here. Check it out here. Yes. And one more is now here. Now when I talk about, look here. When I talk about xy, dxy, suppose this is x, this is y, right? So here, this plane which is present, xy, 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 this plane will have xy orbitals in it. Now, you can change it out and you can make it xz this way. Now, what is this one? X, and this is coming towards you, so this is, check it. So this is coming towards me, this is coming towards you, this is xz. So here also will be dxz. Then what remains here? dyz. This is y and this is z. You see, nowhere I am repeating the plane. This is dyz. So these are the regions present. These are the available positions in between the plane. So all the in between plane axes which are available have been used up. Yes. Now what remains with us is on x-axis and on y-axis we have not used it. This is plus x, this is minus x, this is plus y, this is minus y. So xy has not been used. Now the orbital which is dx square y square, that is dx square y square, this orbital is present on x-axis and on y-axis, right or not? Then you have z. This orbital is present on z-axis. This is dumbbell and it has got torque around it. Torque around it will be covering z-axis, but it will be covering, it's a planar. So z-axis, as I have shown a while earlier, this torque is present like this. So it's almost covering all the orbitals respectively, right? So it's like a collar-like structure around z orbital. Now you can see that these two orbitals, this is dz square, these two orbitals, they are on axis, right or not? They are on axis, and these ones are in between axes. Did you get it? Shapes of d orbitals is extremely important in order to understand coordination compound interactions. Now looking on this orbital diagram here, so generally what we will say here is, so we got d orbitals. I'll draw the d orbitals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Clear or not? Now, when there was an individual metal atom present, individual atom, or we call that as isolated metal atom. This is very important. I'll be very slow here in discussing this. So once we have the individual metal atom, all the d orbitals in absence of the field, I will write down in absence of ligand field. So when there are no ligands present at all, when you have an isolated atom, then the energy of all the d orbitals will be same, right or not? Now what you do, children, is that you have this orbital now, right? This, central metal atom. Now it is being approached by ligands. I am talking about 6 ligands approaching. I am talking about octahedral geometry here. So how many ligands are approaching it? Check out, there are total of 6 ligands approaching it. You can see that. Can you see it or not? This one, this is the planar structure we have. This is central metal, this is the planar structure. These ligands, this is one above the plane, this is one below the plane. Did you get it or not? Now you can see that there are 6 ligands coming and they are symmetrically coming. How? One from top, one from here, one from here, one from here, one from here, one from here. Equally they are coming along 6 different directions. Same ligands coming along 6 different directions. As they are coming along 6 different directions, what will happen is the orbitals of the d present in the central metal atom, which a while earlier had some fixed energy. Now when the ligands will come in presence of ligand field. So when the ligands will come now, what will happen? Will the energy of all these d orbitals remain same or it will change? It will obviously change, because when the ligands will interact with the d orbitals, the energy of the d orbitals will change. So what happens is, in presence of electrostatic interactions between the ligands and between the central metal atom d orbitals, what will happen is the net energy content, the potential energy content of the system will rise. That means the net energy of the system has increased. That on the whole means new d orbitals now, because ligands are coming along all the directions properly, perfectly, symmetrically, then all the d orbitals will be raised in energy to the same extent. So we call this as energy increment. This is called as lifting of degeneracy. So we call sometimes also this one as loading or LOD, load, lifting of degeneracy. What do I mean to say here by lifting of degeneracy? Lifting of degeneracy means the orbitals still are of same energy, but their energy has now increased from the original energy. So this is an isolated field, this is in presence of ligands. You got the point clear or not? Right. Next what will happen is, now children tell me, you have understood this D orientation properly? Yes. Now try to understand this statement now. D orbitals you have understood now, correct? So these later there will be some electrons in the orbital, so interactions will occur vary. I am talking about a general consideration what will happen when the ligands are coming in the fields itself. So in presence of ligands the energy will not remain same. Now let's have a look. So consider this box. Okay, children. And what do we consider here is, in the middle of this we consider a central atom. So in the middle we have a central atom, right? So if you look on this one, this will be our x-axis, this will be y-axis, and this will be z-axis. So if I break it apart, it will be like this. This x-axis, this is y-axis, and this is z-axis. Clear? Right. So now, when the ligands are coming, how are ligands approaching the central atom? So can I consider octahedral field? I'm talking about octahedral field. Can I consider octahedral field to be like that ligands are approaching along 6 faces of a proper cube? Yes, to this way, one from above, one from below, right? So we can consider it. So there be a ligand approaching along this direction. Yes, this way ligand is approaching. So ligand with an electron pair. Then you got ligand approaching along this direction also. Then you have ligand approaching from top also, ligand approaching from bottom also, ligand approaching from back also, and ligand approaching from front also. This is front back, this is left right, this is top bottom. Did you get the clearance here? How are the ligands approaching? Ligands are approaching, which axis is this? So ligands are approaching along what axis? X-axis. Ligands are approaching along what axis? Y-axis. Ligands are approaching along what axis? Z-axis. Now I have a question. Now we have the orbitals here. What are the orbitals? This is dxy, this is dxz, this is dyz, this is dx square y square, and this is dz square. For your representation, I'm making it clear here. So these are 5 orbitals we have. Out of these orbitals, children, tell me which orbitals are along the axis and which orbitals are in between the axes. So this is x, this is y. On x and on y, what is the orbital called as? That is called as dx square y square. And on z, what is the orbital called as? dz square. Between these two, between x and y, the orbital which is present is called as dxy. Correct or not? Now, ligand is approaching along the axis, and these orbitals are in between the axes. Now my question is, which of the orbitals will be affected more? The orbitals which are along the axis, that means the orbital which is along the axis, this is along the axis orbital, and then you have the orbital which is in between the axes. So there is no direct interaction between ligand and central metal atom d orbital. Here there is head-on-head interaction between ligand and central metal atom's orbital. Are you getting it or not? So this interaction is direct and this interaction is indirect. So what happens is, those orbitals which are in between the plane are also repelled. Those which are on the plane, in between the plane and which are on the axis. So which are on the axis are in direct interaction with the 6 ligands, but which are in between the axes are in indirect interaction. So here, if the ligand is coming along this direction, this is direct interaction, that's on axis. But if the orbital is here and ligand is coming in this direction or this direction, this will also be affected. But the effect on dx square y square will be more compared to the impact on dxy. As a result of that, the energy of those orbitals which are in between the plane will be less compared to the orbitals which are on the plane. So what will happen is, on the whole, children, when the breaking will come into play, the orbital diagram will break how? It will break as so far it is clear. This is in presence of field. So I will remove these off. So what did you get? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Correct or not? It has been lifted. Then breaking will occur. How many orbitals energy has increased? 2. And how many orbitals energy will be less? Means how much it has decreased? 3. So what will happen is, 3 orbitals which are in between the plane will come down, and 2 orbitals which are on the axis directly projecting towards the ligands energy will be increased. So which one will be these orbitals? dxy. This will be dxz. This will be dyz. And this orbital will be dx square y square, and this will be dz square. Now keep it in mind. So in presence of ligand field, these d orbitals have splitted. This is called as crystal field splitting. So we call that as CFS. That is crystal field splitting. So what has split here? D orbitals has split into how many sets? 2 sets. One of the set is having low energy, one of the set is having high energy. The set of orbitals, how many are there? 3. So these 3 in presence of ligands now have become degenerate, and these 2 have become degenerate. But there has occurred splitting between the 2. So the amount of energy with which the 2 have broken apart into 2 sets, we call that as crystal field splitting energy. So that is called as CFSE, crystal field splitting energy. Did you get the words clear here? Now tell me, if now there are 2 different sets of d orbitals or not, right? If there is an electron in dxy and you give it energy, it can shift from dxy to dx square to y square. So dd transition has occurred or not? So when the electron will come back to the original space, original position, it will lose some energy, it will give you color or not. But in VBT, there was no such approach at all coming to play at all. Clear or not? So dd transition can lead to color. But when you take VBT approach into consideration, there is no possibility, because all the d orbitals are degenerate. But here there is breaking of degeneracy, not only lifting of degeneracy, there is breaking of degeneracy as well. And the amount of energy with which the crystal has splitted, we call that the d orbital has splitted, we call that as crystal field splitting energy. In which field? In octahedral field, because it has occurred in how many ligand systems? 6. So we represent that by delta 0. We can call that as like this, CFSE delta 0. That is crystal field splitting energy. In which field? Octahedral field. So you can write down as delta O. Delta is the crystal field splitting energy. In which field? Octahedral field. And arbitrary, this is now average orbital for you. Sorry, this is average energy for you now, right or not? So this region is called as barycenter. This is averaged mean of the two. What is it called as? Barycenter. And the crystal field splitting energy in octahedral field is given by the value 1 dq or 10 dq, where the word dq means differential of quanta, that is the amount of energy required to shift the electron from ground state to excited state, and those orbitals which are of low energy with same energy. There are three. So how many orbitals are there? Three, which are degenerate. So we call this set as T2g. T2g means triply degenerate. Triply degenerate. And now these two orbitals are of same energy. We call this as doubly degenerate. And the amount of energy with which they have split it out is called as crystal field splitting energy. In which field? Octahedral field. Short term for its representation is delta O. Did you understand how splitting has come into play here? So I'll repeat it. During splitting, what's happening? Ligands are coming octahedral field. I am talking about in octahedral field. So will crystal field theory. So we talk about, I'll write down here, crystal field splitting, 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 in which field? In octahedral field. So this is crystal field splitting in which field? Crystal field splitting in octahedral field, or crystal splitting in octahedral field. Correct or not? Now you have got two sets, T2g and EG. T2g is more stable compared to EG. Are you getting the points or not? In octahedral field, when the ligands are coming, few of the d orbitals are affected more, few are affected less. Those which are along the axis are affected more. I told you the reason for that. So which are along the axis will be affected more. Which are in between the axis are affected less. Oh, clear or not? Now in this case, you see that dx square, y square and dz square are having high energy, and dxy, dxz, dyz are having low energy. So T2g set in octahedral field, T2g set is more stable than EG. So T2g set is more stable than EG set. So if there is one electron here and you want to shift it to what? EG set, you need energy for that. And once it shifts here and comes back to the ground state, once it is coming back to the ground state, it will emit out some energy or not. So how much energy has been emitted out, that can be calculated as h nu. We can calculate E is equal to what? H nu. If you know the frequency, you will be in a position to calculate the energy of the photon as well. So when you relate out that frequency value with the frequency values of the visible zone, and if it falls in that zone, we'll be able to see the color of the coordination compound. This is the reason why when you look on copper sulfate anhydrous, it is not colored. The reason is simple. Copper will have d orbitals. When there is no ligand, will there be splitting of copper? No. Once ligand is not there, because water acts as the ligand, right or not? CuSO4, copper will have it is d orbitals. Splitting is not there. Reason, there is no ligand. Once ligand is not there, splitting is not there, splitting not there, all the d orbitals are of same degeneracy. They are of same energy. Because of same energy, D transition is not possible, color does not come into play. Now dissolve that copper sulfate in water, it converts to CuSO4, pentahydrated, means 5 moles of water of crystallization get attached to it. So water will act as ligand. What it will do? Will the d orbitals remain such, or they will split out into two sets? Definitely. One is they split into two sets, transition can occur from ground state to excited state. We will be able to see the color of the compound respectively. Am I clear? Or am I clear, children, or not? Right. So even you can convert it out. So because, children, roughly 1 kilojoule equals to 83 centimeter inverse. Now we can show that calculation, how we can calculate the energy value. So E equals to what? what is E equal to h nu. If nu is known to you, you can easily calculate energy. For 1 mole, how will the energy be calculated? For 1 mole, if you want to calculate the energy, you follow the pattern here. So, what has happened so far? We have d orbitals, isolated system, lifting of degeneracy, it breaks into two sets. This is called as T2G set, this is called as EG set, T2G triply degenerate, and this is EG doubly degenerate. Keep it in mind. These three ligands, I mean to say three orbitals, dxy, dxz and dyz, their energy always in energy diagram should be higher than the isolated system. So I'll consider this to be an isolated system. Its energy should be higher because naturally these systems are in the field and this is in the isolated system. This is isolated. And naturally, when the ligands are not present, when the atom is isolated, central metal atom is isolated, its energy will be definitely less. Even if splitting has occurred there, the amount of energy of that T2G set has 100%, it will be definitely more than that of an isolated system. So diagrammatically, it should be clear to you. So you got T2G set and EG set. Now, understand it well. So we said the differential of quanta here, the averaged mean of the two is taken to be 10 dq. Means the difference between the two you can take equal to how much? Either 10 dq. dq is the differential of quanta in terms of photons, or 1 dq. Now, get these things clear. If electron goes in T2G set, if the electron is going in T2G set, will it stabilize the crystal? Will it stabilize the compound or not? Yes. And when the electron goes in T2G set, stability increases. And remember, when electron is going in T2G set, the amount of energy given out from the system is 0.4, it will be minus. And this EG set, electron will go, it will be unstabilizing, and it unstabilize the value of plus 0.6. So when you sum up the two, it comes equal to what? Minus 0.6, actually 0.4 plus 0.6 is equal to 1. Now if this is in terms of 1 dq, if you write in terms of 10 dq, then the value will be fast, 0.4 I have taken. Alright, so if you take it in terms of 10, it will be 4 and it will be 6. In terms of 10 dq, it will be minus 4 and minus 6, sorry, plus 6. Don't add plus and minus here. Minus means the loss of energy, plus means the energy is present within the system. Plus and minus values are that here, representations. Or we can write down, if this is minus 0.4, that can also be written by 2 by 5 of delta 0. So that is minus 0.4 of delta 0. It is plus 0.6 of delta 0. What does delta 0 mean here? Delta 0 means what? Crystal field splitting. In which field? Octahedral field. Or when you write delta 0, this is crystal field splitting energy in octahedral field. Oh, got it or not? Crystal field splitting energy in which field? Octahedral field. So it is 2 by 5 of that total energy. How much is the crystal field splitting energy here? It is 2 by 5 of that value when the electron is going in. So it is minus 2 by 5. And that one, if it is 0.6, it will be 3 by 5 plus 3 by 5. In simple words, we can say, when the electron goes in T2G set, it stabilizes the system. It stabilizes the compound by the value of 2 by 5. And if it goes to EG system, it unstabilizes it by the value of 3 by 5. So instability means addition of energy. System has energy in it. So that will be plus 3 by 5. And you will have minus 0.4 or 4 or in terms of 2 by 5 value. So 2 by 5 stability value and 3 by 5 instability value. Naturally, if you want to shift electron from T2G to EG, you have to give energy or not. So one is, suppose we have a complex like this, children. Say we have a complex like TiH2O 6 times Cl3. This is the complex that we have. And this complex is colored. Now looking on this, how color will come into play? You can see that titanium will be under plus 3 oxidation state. Titanium's atomic number is 21, 22, 3d2, 4s2. Lost how many electrons? 3. So titanium 3 plus will be 3d1. Now very simple. If there is d1 configuration, very simple now. So that d1 electron will go in which set? T2G set. So in case of octahedral field, remember, in case of octahedral field, till D3 configuration, it doesn't matter. So till D3, it doesn't matter. So electron will go to what? T2G3. So one electron to this, one to this, one to this. So till T2G is filled. Now, important thing is there, which is, it has split it out or not? Yes. One thing is there. If suppose, let us not take this example by now, energy concentration we can do later. Or if you want to do that also, titanium under plus state. So it has one electron. First understand that it has one electron, right? So if it is shifted, you gives it energy to it, it is shifted to higher state, right? Good. Now while coming back to the ground state, it will give some energy or not? That energy will be matching with some frequency. So the radiation is given out, we will measure the frequencies. Once we measure the frequencies, H we know, we can calculate the energy for 1 mole. E equals to what? N0 into H C by lambda. Because nu equals, this is for 1 mole of system. So energy will be N0 into H into C into wave number. And the value of centimeter inverse I gave you a while earlier was in terms of wave number only. So frequency will be in terms of what? When you calculate frequency per second, hertz. So wave number will be given to you. Wave number means what? The number of waves present per centimeter, present per length. Yes. So wave number will be given to you. You can calculate easily energy. E equals to Avogadro's number into H into C into wave number. So that wave number will be already calculatable there from the experimentation. C is speed of light, H is Planck's constant, N0 is Avogadro's number. When you calculate E, it comes equal to almost 83 kilojoules per mole, provided this wave number is 20,000 centimeter inverse. So experimentally, when you calculate the wave number, you will be able to find out the amount of energy emitted as well. And if that energy which has been emitted out in terms of its wavelength, in terms of its frequency, if it is matching with the visible zone, we will be able to see the color. And color that comes into play is the wavelength that reaches your eyes, not the one which has been given to it. So we have complementary colors. So we have one discussion of this also after maybe once we are done with this crystal field theory, we have a discussion of colors in coordination compounds. By now I am telling you that because d orbitals do not remain degenerate in presence of fields, they split out. They break out. So as they are breaking, DT transition can lead to the colors, and the colors will, when the wavelength is, when the energy is emitted out, we can have the wave number of that. Once wave number is known, we can calculate the energy associated with it respectively. Clear or not? Good. So color will come into play, and color can come into play easy. Now my question is, now if we have the configuration till D3, it doesn't matter, because till D3 we have a simple postulate. Electrons will keep on going in which set? T2G set. So we have one electron here, one electron here, one electron here. Suppose we have a question. Now in Ti, H2O 6 times Cl3, calculate CFSE. Now this is different term here. One is crystal field splitting energy. That is the amount of energy, crystal field splitting energy. And one is crystal field stabilization energy. How do we calculate crystal field stabilization energy? Look here. CFSE equals to. Now I will not draw individual, that's isolated, then ligand field, then T2G, EG. I will directly draw T2G set and I will draw EG set. Keep it in mind, this is octahedral field, crystal field splitting in which field? Sorry, crystal field splitting energy, or delta zero in octahedral field. So if I have a complex like Ti, H2O 6 times Cl3, we checked it a while earlier, titanium is under +3 oxidation state, so electronic configuration will be 3D1. That means that electron, this is T2G set and this is which set? EG set. That electron will easily go in T2G set. Crystal field stabilization energy of a complex equals to what? Minus 0.4 into number of electrons in T2G set plus 0.6 into number of electrons in EG set. Right or not? So how many electrons are going in T2G set? Each electron stabilizes by the value of 0.4. And how many electrons in going in EG set? Each unstabilizes by the value of 0.6. Clear or not? Or you can write this formula also as minus 2 by 5 delta 0 into number of electrons in T2G set, that is 2 by 5 of octahedral splitting, right or not? So out of the total energy, how much is the stability provided by the T2G electron is minus 2 by 5 of that value. Yes, plus it will be 3 by 5 of delta 0 into number of electrons in EG set. When you are writing it in short term, you write minus, you will write number of electrons in T2G set into minus 0.4 plus number of electrons in EG set into plus 0.6, right? So this is how you can calculate crystal field stabilization energy of that total field. That you keep it in mind. Crystal field splitting energy, that will be given to you. Of that value you have to find it out. Okay, so you have one electron here, T2G. Now crystal field stabilization energy will be equal to how many electrons are there? 1. So minus 0.4 of delta 0. It will be minus 0.4 value of that octahedral splitting, which is an experimental value. Clear or not? Good. Now if it is D2 and if it is D3, So till D3 we have no problem at all. Whatever the type of ligands will come, whether they are weak ligands or strong ligands, till the time D3 configuration comes into play, there is no question of pairing and unpairing at all. That I will tell you now. So till D3 configuration, what will be CFSE and what will be electronic configuration? Electronic configuration will be T2G3. What will be CFSE equal to? Minus 0.4 into how many electrons? 3. Anything in octet? E.g. No. So that will be minus 1.2 of delta 0 will be crystal field splitting energy. Delta value is crystal field splitting energy. In which field? Octahedral field. Crystal field splitting energy in octahedral field, because you can have crystal field splitting energy in tetrahedral field also. So how do we write that one also? CFSE. In which field? Delta T you write. Here you are writing delta O. So it will be CFSE will be minus 0.4 into 3. Am I clear or not? Now comes the question, how does it answer that pairing and no pairing will occur when you have a strong and weak ligands respectively? Now get to the fact very clearly here. So tell me, what is the formula for calculating CFSE? Yes? Number of electrons in T2G into 0.4 or minus 0.4 into number of electrons T2G plus 0.6 into number of electrons in EG. Now children, if we have D4 configuration, which configuration you have? D4 configuration. Now there are two possibilities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will write both possibilities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if it is D4 configuration, you can have 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. This is T2G set. Till D3 there is no problem at all, because each of these 3 orbitals of this T2G set are of same energy. So they will have one electron according to Hund's rule we are following. Now when 4th electron is to be added in D4 configuration, when 4th electron is to be added, we got a problem. Because that D4 electron can come and pair up, or that D4 electron can go up in EG set. If it goes here, then the electronic configuration becomes T2G4 EG0. And if it goes in the EG set, it becomes T2G3 EG0. This is basic rule that I am talking about. Now sir, how do we decide whether the electron will go in the EG set or it will pair up in the lower set? So for that purpose, we need to understand one more concept, that is called as pairing energy. Because this is for octahedral field, we'll call it PO, pairing energy in which field? Octahedral field. We have two values, delta 0. What does delta 0 mean? Crystal field splitting energy in which field? Octahedral field. So we'll write down like this, CFSE in which field? Octahedral field. So that is delta O. And we'll write pairing energy in which field? Octahedral field. Now let me tell you, crystal field splitting energy is the amount of energy, understand it, amount of energy which is required to shift the electron from T2G to EG. Because when splitting has occurred, the total energy difference between the two is CFSE, crystal field splitting energy. So if you want to shift, if you want to let the 4th electron to go to T2G set, which set? From if you want 4th electron to go to EG set, or if you want 4th electron to go to T2G set. If it goes to T2G set, then pairing has occurred. And when electrons will pair up in a T2G set, the amount of energy change occurring there is called as pairing energy. So pairing energy is the amount of energy required to pair the electron in T2G set, in the lower energy set. So then the configuration becomes T2G4 EG. Splitting energy, crystal field splitting energy will be the amount of energy required by the electron to move to which system, to move to which shell? EG shell. Clear? That's the difference of the energies. Obviously, electron would always love to be in T2G set. But if energy considerations are suitable, if energy considerations are not suitable, then what will electron love to do is, electron rather than trying to remain in T2G set will love to go to EG set. So there is an interplay of energies, that is crystal field splitting energy, and pairing energy. Now there are two rules. If crystal field splitting energy is more than pairing energy, that means if the amount of energy required to shift the electron, to move the electron to EG set is more than the amount of energy required to pair the two, simple rule is that electrons and all atoms will always follow the rule. They will always try to occupy more stability, wherein they have to consume less energy. So if pairing energy is less compared to crystal field splitting energy, that means energy required to unpair the electron is more, but energy required to pair the electron is less, then electron would love to do what? Pair up. So once electron is pairing up, electronic structure becomes T2G4 Eg0. But for that I have a question, which is when will delta 0 be more than pairing energy? Very simple. When the difference between the two sets, that is difference between T2G set and EG set, when the difference between the two is more or when the difference between the two is less? Tell me. Crystal field splitting energy will be more when the difference between the two is more or less? Yes, when the distance between T2G set and EG set is more, then crystal field splitting energy will be more. And when crystal field splitting energy is more, automatically pairing energy will be less. So electron loves to pair up. Thus, what we said earlier in VBT, that when a strong ligand will come, pairing occurs. Crystal field answers that and says why? Because when there is breaking of the d orbitals, T2G set and EG set breaking off, if the ligands are very strong, then the crystal field splitting energy. So in strong ligand field, crystal field splitting energy is very high. Because crystal field splitting energy is very high, so electron does not love to go in EG state, rather it will love to go in which state? T2G state. So electron have paired up or not? So pairing occurs in case of a strong field, because the amount of energy required for pairing will be less. Okay, now a very simple thing. When will unpairing occur? I mean to say, when will electron go to EG set? When delta 0 is less than pairing energy, electron will go to which set? EG set. Very simple. So energy required to unpair is less than to pair. Then electron will definitely go to EG state. So this will be electronic configuration in strong field or weak field. Weak field, that's why weak field is produced high spin complexes, while as strong field is produced low spin complexes. We have learned yesterday low spin and high spin complex. Clear or not? So what's the interplay? Pairing energy and crystal field splitting energy. If crystal field splitting energy is more, pairing will occur. If crystal field splitting energy is less, then what will happen? Unpairing will occur. Electron will go to which set? EG set. So in a weak field system, electronic configuration becomes T2G3 EG0, and a strong field it becomes T2G4 EG0. So one more thing that you have to add to crystal field stabilization energy is plus pairing energy in which field? Octahedral field. So you have to add how many pairings has occurred, because how many pairings have occurred, they will occur in which field? T2G, right? So it will stabilize the system or not. So it will on the whole lead to the stability of a system only. So we call crystal field stabilization energy will be the interplay of electrons in T2G and the electrons in EG and pairing energies. How many pairings have occurred respectively. So those also have to be taken into consideration. Now you understood? Now yesterday when I showed the case, there was D3 chrome. Suppose we had the case like this. I will use the VBT approach here. I will use VBT approach. Say Cr NH3 3 plus chromium 3d5 4s1 lost how many? 3 electrons, 1 from S, 2 from D. So it will be 3d3 now, right or not? 1 2 3. So 1 2 3. Ammonia is a strong ligand. 4 5. Why did I say yesterday that these two orbitals will remain as such? So hybridization will be D2sp3. You could have asked me question, sir, there are 3 electrons, at least 2 can pair up, 1 will be unpaired. So there are 3 d orbitals available. That won't happen because crystal field theory will answer. And magnetic moment also already gives us the value of root 15. That means there are 3 unpaired electrons. Now this can answer your question. How? So there are T2G set and EG set. How many electrons? 1, 2, 3. So there is no question of pairing because these are present in the same T2G set. So within T2G set there is no question of pairing. Pairing only comes into play when the electron has a chance to go to EG set or T2G set. Then only the question of pairing will come into play. Am I clear with this? So when you are calculating crystal field stabilization energy equals to minus 0.4 into number of electrons in T2G plus 0.6 into number of electrons in EG plus pairing energy. This is how splitting occurs in which field? Octahedral field. So in an octahedral field, when the ligands are coming, lifting of degeneracy will first occur. So whatever the energy was there, the energy of the orbitals will rise. Then the orbitals will be split into 2 sets, T2G and EG. T2G will be more stable than EG, and the stability of T2G set is by the value of 0.4 to the octahedral splitting, that is delta 0. Keep it in mind. So the questions will be given in terms of wave numbers. So when wave number is more, frequency will be more, wavelength will be less. So you have to see when the pairing energy will be given. It can be given in terms of wave number or wavelength or frequency. When CFSE will be given, it will also be given in terms of wave number or wavelength or frequency. You need to make sure the values, whether it is wave number or wavelength or frequency. According to that, you can see which of the two is greater. Keep it in mind. Wavelength, wave number. Wave number is directly proportional to frequency, and wave number is inversely proportional to wavelength. That also means frequency and wavelength are inversely proportional. More frequency means less wavelength. And energy is directly proportional to frequency, energy inversely proportional to lambda, energy directly proportional to wave number. So you have to see whether the given pairing energy and crystal field splitting energies have been given in terms of wave numbers, wavelengths, or in terms of frequencies. According to that, you can decide whether pairing will occur or not. And we will take different complexes in which we will use these postulates to calculate crystal field stabilization energy for different complexes and see whether the complex will be inner field or outer field. Now you understood what is meant by inner field, outer field, and which d orbitals will be used during D2sp3 hybridization. You can see that dx square y square and dz square are the 2 orbitals that are used during D2sp3 hybridization. Am I clear or not? So I have discussed only the theoretical background and practicality of crystal field theory. With the use of crystal field theory, I have shown you in octahedral fields how do the orbitals break, how there is breaking of degeneracies, how do the orbitals break into 2 sets of T2G, EG, and then when the question of pairing comes, when pairing will occur and when it will not occur, it will be depend upon the interplay of 2 things, that is crystal field splitting energy and pairing energy. So according to that, we can calculate crystal field stabilization energy for the whole complex. You can see now that when the crystal will be made, when the coordination compound will be made, it's a counterion, it's an interaction of cations and anions as well. So usually it will be a solid structure to you. Thus we call this theory as crystal field theory, because this interaction occurs in terms of field produced by ligands around the central metal. On the whole, this is generating a crystal for us. Am I clear here? Clear or not? So next discussion, children, that we will start will be, first of all, I'll deal with the discussions only, how splitting patterns come into play. So next discussion will be crystal field splitting. Crystal field theory same, but now in tetrahedral field. If the 4 ligands are coming, how does it occur? Am I clear? That will be our next discussion. Thank you, children.